We're going to go and get started here. People are drifting, but that's fine. Because if you've been to other workshops, you'll understand there's not really enough time for this no matter what. We're going to simulate exercises that should take you days or weeks with your team to do. So, I'm going to rant at you for a little bit here. Then we'll do some work. Actually, then I'll make you move around so we can work as teams. But we'll get to that in a little bit. And then I'm going to interrupt you right as the work gets really fun and exciting. So I'll be yelling at you. Luckily, they gave me a microphone, so I can just get closer and get louder to get your attention. If you worry about the schedule, I'm not showing you an agenda up front because it's a workshop. There's no critical last step where I go, and now I have the final answer here. If we run out of time, we run out of time. We just won't do the last exercise or something. It'll be good. Okay, though, I'm going to start. A couple years ago, this is what everyone meant when they said ecosystem. But that was a passing fad, I say. It's never really been true, and Apple certainly didn't invent the word ecosystem or the concept of it. Everything's an ecosystem. Good designers know this, not just digital things either. The world is a complex, interrelated system, and physical products, especially information products, which is what we pretty much all work on, I suspect, have been multi-channel for decades at least. Boringly, you might think these days, newspapers and magazines are designed not just to be readable to the end user once it gets into their little hands, but to be appealing on the newsstand. And have room for mailing labels to make sure it actually gets to you if you're one of the subscriber people. I've seen people say lately, in the maximum nerd mode, print is in some ways responsive. Always has been, if you design it right way. Today, a popular magazine, to stick with the print motif, sells around 3 million subscriptions a week. It's actually not bad. I mean, they aren't profitable, but let's just assume that those problems don't exist. Well, from the 60s through the 1990s or so, TV Guide was hugely more popular. They sold somewhere over 20 million copies every week. With what was, look at this with a new eye, with a modern one, basically a database dump you pay for and then they glue ads into to make more money off of it. Well, the guys who actually gathered this data realized early on that's what they were doing. That they didn't have a magazine as a product, they had a data product. And so especially when the first EPGs came out, electronic programming guides, that when you turn on your cable system, especially back in the 70s or 80s, popped up or upstairs in the hotel rooms, popped up on the screen to say what was on, they realized they could repurpose all this content the same way. In some ways, people like TV Guide had already been doing that. They had been storing short and long descriptions and titles and metadata before most people called it metadata, and were able to reuse it. Simplifying the story some with mergers and acquisitions over the decades, because it wasn't exactly TV Guide per se. The content we see today on our more high-tech, shiny cable systems, not like what we have in the hotel room upstairs, or the satellite or streaming services, is not just the same basic format, but it's the actual same content from the 70s sometimes. There's no reason to write a new description for the Lawrence Welk show up there every time it airs. You just grab from the database the original 1979 description. Data is data. Okay, like I said, I promise I'm not going to keep talking all day, but I have a few more ranting points. You're probably going to be approaching design from whatever way you're used to that word, the word design meaning. Database design, software design, process design. I'm going to show you stuff that looks probably a little different. By the way, if I'm wobbling, it's because I like to wander aimlessly, but I have a microphone and I don't really feel like picking it up. So I'm having to restrain myself from moving away from this thing. Hopefully they're going to share the video too with everybody so you can bring it back to your team for a change, which is great. Weird for a workshop. Anyway, I've been all kinds of things. A kind of mediocre front-end developer and a bad DBA and so forth. But these days, at least, most people identify me as one of those UX designer guys. So you might think I'm all shiny pictures and stuff like that. And therefore, design means something else. So if we mean different things by design, how do we all work together? Well, I don't think we do mean different things by design, actually, when we get down to it. UX design, and again, I'm going to talk about me because I know what I think, is about building systems too. We just include users as part of the system and acknowledge they have quantifiable needs and constraints. I think that's crucial to understand for a lot of this because users are the least changing and changeable part of your system. They're the ones most prone to error and inconsistency, and the ones least easy to force into any particular behavior. So, if you start thinking, who cares what this UX guy thinks, just keep that in mind. It's actually important to make your system work for people in the business. Because making your product future-proof is about understanding the users. User-centric design, even if it's not capitalized like the official way where you then say UCD, requires backing up, approaching problems freshly from the user's point of view or the business's point of view, and considering what's unique and powerful about the platforms that you're led to organically as you do the design process. All this process stuff, and what we're going to do here, hopefully, should be platform agnostic for the most part. Today, with all the devices we have around us, we're beginning to be freed from the constraints of platforms. We're on the cusp of being able to assume that the technology exists to do whatever we want or need. I wear a smartwatch. I'll probably point at it several times during this thing. How many devices have I got with me on the podium here? So we can approach things from a real-world point of view instead of saying, oh, well, it's stuck inside the computer screen. And from the user and business perspective alone, at least conceptually, as we start. Cities are already wired up. Start looking around. You're going to see antennas hanging off light poles and everything. Utility and roadway monitoring is very common. Everybody's doing this stuff, especially in big cities. Stores track inventory, and increasingly you, and everything's happening at increasingly real-time speeds. People are wired up. I already mentioned this one. How many of you wore a fitness tracker? Maybe not this morning, but at least sometime in the last week. Okay, think about that. Even a couple years ago, 10 years ago, that people would have gone, I have no idea what you're even talking about. But seriously, you've wired yourself? And I won't ask you to raise your hands for this one, but almost everybody with a biomedical implant, from a hearing aid to an insulin pump, I know people with both of those devices, anytime installed in the last 5 years that snuck up on us, Cyborg snuck up on us, has a wirelessly connected device inside them. We're wired. And all these things are becoming now increasingly visible. They aren't just the utility secretly doing stuff with you. This is a wired sidewalk. Sort of. It's actually projected, so the sidewalk isn't wired, but you get the point. It is real, not a concept. This is something happening in New York City right now. Only a few pilot ones, but it's happening. Subway information is projected on the sidewalk so as a sort of ambient information radiator so pedestrians can see other travel choices available to them right there. How can and will your data be repurposed now or in the future? Thinking of systems, instead of, say, websites, means thinking about how information works agnostic of channels. It means thinking of information architecture, data architecture, storage technologies, what's in the API first before you get to interfaces and what's the content itself. Think about some of the cool, big, successful products. Twitter was SMS-based, but you might use a website or an app on your computer or an app on your phone. Evernote, I like that one. Who used some competing tool in the past? I actually put a list of them. Simple Notes, SpringPad, WizNotes, Keep, remember Google Keep? Fetch Notes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you don't use those now. If you use anything, use Evernote because they were terrific websites, or it was a terrific iOS app only. Evernote was a platform from the beginning. They actually have a name for it. They call it Trunk. I don't think you've ever seen that because they don't publicize it, but internally they have a platforms team that develops all their stuff on the platform first, and then they can branch out. So when they went, oh, Android's really taking off, a couple years ago when it was less incredibly obvious as it is now, they just tossed out that app. They went, wow, people would get some benefit from desktop plugin integration. We'll just build one of those, next week. There's none of this 2-year delay while they figure out how to re-architect everything. Thinking of their product as a service meant they could move into new platforms immediately without rethinking the business model, re-architecting their base systems. Being user-centric meant they made good decisions for their product and the business instead of what was comfortable or easy for them to build. Okay, one thing I'll do, and you can nod vigorously or instead of pointing at me here now, some people have trouble moving past the web equals the internet. And some people, I mean probably people who actually write articles about how cool this is and stuff. It annoys me. It's true, we use HTTP transfer for lots of data. And what with web views, most apps are actually hybrid apps when you get down to it. If it helps you, go ahead and think of it this way. At least in digital output, your web content is going to be reused many, many different ways, just not always on your website. It's generic digital content, but it's fine to think of it as the web being everywhere. Content is how many of us live and breathe. And by us, of course, I mean our products, in case you aren't like me and completely incapable of divorcing your life from your work. So if you aren't asking hard questions about your content strategy, that means reuse and tagging and promotion and archiving, not just writing the content, and use in multiple channels, you're probably going to die. By which, again, I mean your company. You probably lived through it yourself. Even if you find it hard to think you have anything to do with traditional publishers, you do. This link is one of those things you can write down now instead of waiting for it later. There's a leaked strategy report in the last couple of days from the New York Times, which is hugely fascinating. It's really long, though. This thing is to an analysis of it. That's almost every bullet point in that analysis resonated with me in some important way. So if you aren't thinking deeply about your strategy, if you aren't lamenting some horrible thing your organization or client is doing with content strategy and multi-platforming, then you aren't thinking hard enough about it, I say. Read this and go, oh my God, what were we doing? Okay. So how do we do this? How do we move from, let's call it, software-driven design to product-centric or user-centric design? Well, things change. I change my mind a lot. Obviously, I rant randomly and realize that's something else, but let's consider this for now a good set of touch points to hit on to make sure you're designing for users and for use on every platform and interface. Today, we're going to kind of pretend it's a process. If you follow along, we're going to go step 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not really a process. That's a fake thing we're doing because, again, it's a workshop and I only have a few minutes to do all this stuff. It's a set of touch point things. You do most of these things repeatedly or constantly. Like every day at the end of the day, make sure you hold, look, tap, and connect. Actually get in there into the context. I'll explain what that means later. A lot of these things, though, you literally do constantly. They're integral to your design process. It's not like, now we're ready for the hold, look, tap, connect stage. So don't be confused by that because of the way I had to organize the talk. Okay, it's a workshop, as I keep saying. So what I want you to do, I'm going to wander for this one so that I can point and grab you and all, is organize as teams, which I mean like fake project teams. So we'll do it this way. If you're not a developer, a UX guy, a writer, and by developer I mean any kind, database architect, anything. So you'd consider yourself either you are a product owner or marketing guy, or you just are an other and can't decide, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Anybody with your hand only halfway up can put it down. The rest of you guys, you're the product owners for our team here, okay? So everybody, you guys stand up, say, I have a team here. You can spread out if you want. You two guys in the same row. I'm putting it at you. I think I'll make you. You should come up to the front, and that's your team's table instead. Everybody else gravitate to those things. Product owners try to organize your team so you don't have entirely 5 data architects who showed up from one company. Split them up so they all spread out amongst the thing. You should end up with it works pretty easy. It's easier than it sounds. You should end up with a fake project team. Hopefully we'll have a designer and a Fed and a software developer and a data guy and a writer and some other stuff like that. When you start being quiet because this seems to have worked, then I'll tell you the next step we're going to do.
It's a Monday.
Oh my God, you reminded me it's Monday. Now I'll never make it.
My apologies.
Wait, I can't remember who I pointed to. That was your team there? Yeah, you need to go organize your team. Go yell at people.
Gather my team here.
You don't need to interview the people or anything. Just kind of spread them around quickly. It'll be fine. If you have more than 6 people on a team, that's probably too many. Push them to a lower team. Microphone isn't a bad thing to have. I can just yell at people. Well, that's the problem. It's getting people's attention. The thing is gone. So. Okay, who has a spare visual designer? Okay, you're just top. You're out of luck. But is it just you four guys? Great. Somebody here. You've got too big a team. Somebody has to get kicked out. So go do that. When you get down to about 4 people, it starts becoming kind of a small team. Over 6, it starts to be kind of large for these exercises. So make sure you don't have too many or too few people. Split your team or distribute people if you need to. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do the next one to make sure I didn't lose anything. Instead of giving you guys an exercise to a fake exercise to work on, which I used to, and it wasn't terrible. I'm going to let you guys do this organically yourselves. You're each individually going to come up with your own project thing in just like the next 2 minutes, by the way. Well, once I'm done ranting about it. One other thing I'm going to say, because it's short time and I want to get it through the exercises more than anything, just sharing with your team is the most important part. When I say, have you got your idea? Don't tell me what the idea is because, frankly, for the time, I don't care. I'll come around and see it later. What I just want you to know is go, yes, that kind of thing, okay? So we might share if we end up with time, but mostly we're going to keep it internally to our teams, okay? Where are you going to come with your ideas? Well, if you have one you're working on, ideally it's multi-channel. You came to a mobile conference, so I'll bet it's mobile-centric, but it kind of doesn't matter. Any digital product that's got multiple experiences or is great. If you're working on one now and you don't mind sharing it, at least a little, once you pinky swear everybody to not tell about it, use that. If you just have a crazy idea that you've always wanted to build, pitch that one. If it's anything like, I love my Nest, except it keeps crashing, and I have 6 better ideas for it, pitch your new thermostat idea. It can be an existing product, because you remember, these aren't actually VCs. It's okay if it's not going to generate revenue or anything. Think of an elevator pitch. It doesn't have to be everybody in the team, by the way. If somebody doesn't want to contribute an idea, that's fine. You don't have to force them. Pick about 30 seconds. Product owner guys, keep an eye on your watch. Don't let the conversation go on for minutes. Quick pitch. Talk to your teams, and everybody then vote. You have about 2 minutes to pick what idea you're going to work on. Go. Talk. Okay, that's actually been 3 minutes. So who doesn't have an idea that they can fake and go with yet? You guys. You good? Okay. Then I'll corner each team individually. You guys. Good? Okay. Well, since the first two guys I asked have their ideas done, I'm going to tell everybody else stop talking and we're going to go to the next thing. Because don't worry, there will be plenty more exercises and talking, and soon I let you loose with Sharpie markers and everything. It's cool. And Post-it notes. Forgot to mention that part. Okay. They're gonna miss out on this next part. You guys who's paying attention, hit the last team over there and tell them to sit down. You actually it will probably be convenient if you were able to sit for the next thing, because you're going to write stuff and things. So try to figure out if you can spread yourselves amongst the back row there and make sense of your giant team. Okay, so what'd you guys do while deciding on your projects there? You don't have to answer. Most of these are hypothetical. I'll actually point at you if I want an answer. One of you at a time, I hope, talked and the others listened. You seem to be doing exactly what we always get out of these exercises. You asked questions. You had a conversation and didn't really spend time designing. I hope. I didn't see anybody drawing, but I hope not. Keep doing this. Not just today, I meant in general. Even when you have a week instead of 2 minutes, don't get ahead of yourself. Listen, ask, listen to the answer, research, read, analyze. And this isn't just pithy statement that I got from a self-help book thing. This is something that evolved for me failing miserably on other projects in the distant past. I'm one of those, as I hate actually saying it, so I wish he'd come up with a better word, but Jared School's 5 types of decision makers or 5 designers. I'm the genius designer one who would actually interrupt people in meetings. I know where you're going. How about this? And they would go, great, we'll do that thing. And it worked great, but not as well as when I was working a place with success metrics. We could actually measure how CSAT over time. And it worked okay, but not as well as when I, stopped and listened to what people were saying and actually analyzed the product instead. If you get a team together who've been working on similar products, and we're going to pretend that's what's happening today, so this isn't just a theoretical one. And we're going to pretend this is your project team now, and everybody's ideas are equally valid. If you have a team like that, though, in reality, you go to a client, you have your client group internally, the company or something. They've been talking to customers for the first or failed version. They've been working on a similar product that comes out in a paper catalog or something silly like that. Not like I work on those all the time. They have a lot of knowledge in their heads. The problem being, it's inside their head. People are famously terrible at self-analyzing. They cannot tell you what they actually know. But there are techniques that we can use, especially group exercises like we're going to do in just a few seconds, I promise, to extract the information. Collaboratively as a group, equitably, so everybody's contribution is as important as everybody else's, and quickly. Ideally, these things take, say, a couple hours. My ideal is, say, 2 in-person 4-hour sessions. It's about the perfect one. I can explain why if you wonder why not a full 8-hour day. We can actually do it in a fairly few minutes, which is all the time we have. These are some questions I like to ask, though I don't always find them by an in-person process because you can't always get together. If some what is the product seems simple, I've never asked this of a team, even a team 3 years into a project, and not gotten multiple different answers, one from each guy. You have to know what you're working on and make sure everyone is on the same page. So it's not just about you gathering data, it's about the team understanding together what they're actually building. You can gather this, as I just said, without being in the room. There are worksheet things. I've used SurveyMonkey very successfully. If you can't get anything to happen because everybody's paranoid about stuff, you can just do email, get on a call, whatever. I have a number of these questions in much more detail at a link that's in the deck, by the way, if I didn't mention that already. The whole deck's already up on SlideShare. Many of these slides have notes. They have links to whatever article I mentioned inside the speaker notes. So forget SlideShare, just use that to download it and then read the thing again. Okay, since we're going to do it live, we don't have time for 5 questions because we don't have 8 or 12 hours to do the thing. We're going to answer 2 of the questions, which you can write down if you really want to not forget one of them, which is what one problem does it solve, And how is it solved today? Everyone's going to write their answer on a Post-it note. Oops, microphone. So I'll start distributing those things. Here you go. Have a stack of Post-it notes. Here, actually, just push these to the other teams, too. Everybody take a stack. Every one individual person take a stack of Post-it notes. And if these were softer, I'd just throw them across the room, but I don't want everybody to get hit in the head by Sharpie markers. You don't have to start writing just yet to make sure everybody listens to the thing. So that'll take, what, 2 minutes, right? You write your one idea. What I mean is one idea per Post-it note. If you say, what is the one thing it does, but you're like, well, it does like 6 things. If you had to boil it down, you're required by your boss to say, what one thing does it do? Above all, you write that down, and then you put the Post-it note somewhere, which I'll get to in a minute, and then you write down another one until you're done with stuff. Where are you going to put the Post-it notes? Work as a team to figure it out. Yeah, we're not there yet, so if you don't have your Post-it pad, that's okay. Figure out where you're going to put your Post-it notes. You can set aside a place on the table here, because you're allowed to write on these. There's chart paper in the back. So if you want to grab one of the chart paper boards, there's actually, I think, spare ones. I think there's more than 2 chart paper things, so if you don't want to move the easel. And there's a giant Post-it pad down below there. So discuss amongst your team where you want to put these. We're going to have to put them up in a single area so you can like draw on them and scribble on them and stuff like that. Questions? One thing per Post-it. Oh yeah, no, we'll get to it. I just want to give you one more thing, and then I'm going to get to the last slide. I gave you 2 different tasks. Don't forget this one. This one's important too. I gave you 2 different questions to answer. What one problem does it solve, and what solves it today, which is about data and content and stuff like that. Note would exist separately. Normally, I didn't think of this until like a little too late to ask them. Normally we do something like use 2 different colored Post-it notes, which you can if you managed to get that in your team, but you probably didn't get enough of them. Or stickers is a very common one. We use different colored stickers to mean data sources or existing business process or whatever. Just pick something. Have within your team. It doesn't have to be for the whole group here. Your team say, existing process equals star in the corner or box around the whole edge of the Post-it or something so that when you put them up, you can tell the difference between them. That makes sense? Okay. These are your, these are your steps. I want you to answer these 2 questions. Put them up on like I said, the walls don't stick too well, so I would put them either on your table, pick an area that you can use for that's shared, or put them on one of those easel pads. And then stop when you get to this point. Start staring at me plaintively like you want to know what to do about that part, and I'll tell you how to do that one. So I'll remind you guys that you're all part of the project team, so whatever your interpretation of the pitch was, that's accurate. No longer is the person who came up with the idea the only arbiter of what the idea is. You're going to evolve the idea. This kind of fakes the whole how projects evolve over time in a short thing. So you're going to build a different project than your idea was, but that's okay for our purposes. So everybody's idea is great, just write it down and go. Trust me. It's a thing. I'll tell you about it when we get to that step. But let me go ahead and tell everybody in case that happened. If you're putting your Post-its in two different categories, and that's how you're dividing them up, don't do that. Do mark the Post-its themselves, because we're going to organize them in a second here. And they're all kind of the same thing. Trust me, I'll explain it. No, now the idea is to keep refining it. So, just like real projects, one marketing guy brings up a thing, everybody else goes, that's a great idea. He no longer. Okay, so if I made you guys stop writing Post-it notes, who would be sad because they have hundreds of other good ideas? Okay, you look pretty good to me. So this actually continues to exercise. If you come up with another one, I guess you could write it, but in theory, you should stop. You know, if you're doing this for real in a room with a real team, you should segregate these. So it's now we're done writing ideas. The next one is to group them. Now, because of the way we faked it and one person had the idea, so you may have discussed the Post-its as you wrote them, you may not have too many of these, but you're going to group similar ideas. Some of them are going to be exactly the same idea, ideally, in a real world thing. So 2 or 3 people wrote basically the exact same thing, just not in the same wording. The way you do this is everybody gets to move every single Post-it note. You'll eventually get to, it's really amusing, unless you're one of the people fighting about it. When people fight, like somebody moves a Post-it to a group and somebody grabs it, moves it back, and then they grab it, move it back, and like, okay. This is why you have a moderator. In reality, you, as the people who came to this workshop, probably won't actually be doing any of the work. You'll be moderating. You'll do this job. Now, write these things down. You'll help them not have conflicts and say, okay, let's discuss why we're having this grouping issue here. Why do you think this? And you work through it. There should always be a moderator. You don't really have one here, so if there's a problem, raise your hand and I'll come over and fix it for you. Or just, you know, play nicely. But in reality, you need an actual moderator to run the thing and deconflict stuff. So first, group everything. Just put them proximity, identical ideas you can literally stack. Just put it right on top of the other note, pick the one that's got your favorite wording and put that on top. That should just take you, a couple minutes. When you start slowing down and I see fewer hands shuffling, then I'll tell you the next thing to do. Go. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sorry about the walls and the chart paper not working well, so you may want to do things like move computers and cups and stuff. Pick an area of the table you can use where you have plenty of room to do this. Oh yes, I did forget to mention that one. The problems and the current solutions can both be in the same group. They don't have to be answers to the same question. So we're just talking a general affinity grouping thing. We want to present this information. Today we do it like this. Those can both be in the same group for this case. That's why you label the Post-its separately. You already got that? They didn't listen, but okay. Everything.
2 different questions.
Yeah, everything in one big. Yeah, consider every Post-it equally important and group them all the same.
Yeah, pink versus green / blue. Oh, sorry.
No, I was waiting for you to. I got time. Yeah, I'm not sure you guys got that one. too. So everything can go, every post-it is equally the same. I want one big giant group when you start so they can overlap. You can have problems and solutions in the same group.
Yep.
Got that? Okay, I just want to make sure. Well, I just saw two giant groups here, so I want to make sure. Yeah.
We start coding. I'm ready to code.
Miles from code. Sit down. Keep him away from the computer. Okay. So again, I'm going to tell you the next step here. Oh, I should get in front of the camera so it doesn't make me sad. Sorry, you guys have to stay back in the corner there, all alone, not visited much. When you start having your groups, like you guys have there, what we want to do then is label them. So you have a groups. You'll probably want to spread them out for this. Circle them. Take a marker and actually draw a big circle around them. Ideally, we have giant whiteboards for this, by the way. That's my favorite thing. When you go to the big team room thing and you take a whiteboard, because then you can write and rewrite and scribble and change your mind. This isn't the best setup, but fake it. Take a Sharpie, circle all the groups, then label them. You can label them on the paper. It would be whiteboard normally, but I'm trying to use the right words. On the paper directly. Or you can write a new Post-it note if you want. You're going to come with a label for each group. A simple label that summarizes what the group is about. It's about the sales process. It's about content delivery. It's about weather alerts. It's about whatever the grouping system is about. And then make sure everybody agrees. We should have had big Sharpies too. It would have been easier to see for this stage, but we only got the little teeny ones. Tell the conference. They bought them.
There's something about colored markers that even just is eternally attractive.
I'm much pickier about my markers. I don't even use Sharpies. I use these funny archival ink things from Japan. So you have no idea how crazy I am about my markers. If you haven't already figured out, the reason that whiteboards are great for this is because it's a collaborative exercise. So just like you were able to pick up the Post-it notes and move them around as a group, if one person writes the thing on a piece of paper, now you have to scribble it out and write it again. It's less messy if you can just erase it. But so do make sure you agree. Anybody who's like sitting there going, I don't get it, jump up and ask why a group name is like that or why a Post-it is in this area. You guys happy? Questions? Okay, let me walk over there. So there's less yelling, and I can see your thing.
Trying to think about how many clusters of sensors
It's an organic exercise. We can do that thing. There's no limit to the number of groups you have. This is an organically built exercise. When you do this for real, you could end up with 30 groups because you might have started with 200 cards. Remember, you could take an hour to do the cards alone and so forth. Big projects are gigantic. That's difficult. That's something you should tend to avoid because of that. Instead, there can be other phases. If you have a project that involves that much discovery that you don't even realize stuff until later, you need to organize it so it's cards, groups, cards again, you need to keep it separately like that.
Can you give an example of why you would group something about how it's done today versus what the problem is?
I'm trying to think of a really clean one without giving you too much background on, on my actual projects. I have to do a real project.
Take our
Well, yeah, I mean,
Okay, sure. What's your project? Sure, let me get that.
well, our project is basically a crowdsourced to-do list. So let's say I've got to get my oil changed or something like that. I kind of would reach out to my network or the product at large to figure out the best way to accomplish that.
Although we seem to have evolved it into more helping with more complex type to-dos. So
Sure.
and buying a house or buying a car, what are the
What is
steps
your?
that you do?
What's an example of the way people do this today then?
So you talk to your buddies, so people within your community, and that's kind of like what we're trying to figure out. I created like a little theme because I think that this one was around allowing people what needs to be done, and then this is talking about talking with friends. So they're both communities, but they're different types of communities. One's
Right.
local to where you are, and the other's who you are.
So hopefully what you would do, I haven't read all your cards, but an example for that, if you just dreamed up the idea and you said, well, how would we solve this thing? You'd say, well, we're going to have the ability to ask the question and other people can post back and we probably have favorites, and what you end up doing is, and we're going to make friends on the system, and you will start seeing overlaps, and that's the point of grouping like this, is even if you didn't realize, we should create a friends group. So you will go, oh, today they ask their friends. There's an organic sense of community to the area. There's locality, and there's physical proximity and social proximity, and you might have missed one of those, and therefore looking at the existing one, the social proximity, ask my friends when they bought their house, what did we do for that? How they do it today fills in that gap. And so later when you're building feature sets, you go, aha, we should build some social proximity. Don't forget to have a thing that says ask for their Google permissions, and now it'll go find all their friends and say, would you like to would you like to contribute an answer to the community thing? You're not necessarily to that point. You're not going to turn these cards into that. Yeah, we're not going to do that today, but that's the theory of grouping them.
One of the other questions about what mechanisms could sort of generating ideas.
Yeah.
When you just have a problem statement and then what's being done today, we're still trying to link those up as potential.
Well, we're just grouping them. We don't necessarily need complete the linkage. Like I said, because there were several questions, and they tend to be customized to your product in reality too. These are the generic versions of them, so that's a thing. So the how is it solved today would be much more specific. So if we're migrating a digital product, we would say what system, what kind of use, that kind of thing. We would be specific versus yours, which is an all-new product. You say, so how non-digitally do people solve it today? Whatever that. But yeah, we aren't necessarily, all we're doing is grouping. All we're doing is saying these are similar types of statements, as opposed to actually doing that last step of saying, based on this, I'm going to make a feature from it. Hopefully that works.
Fair enough, thanks.
Oh well. Draw on it anyway. Yeah. Well, we don't have dry erase markers, so just draw on it anyway. You got that part, right? You're supposed to. That's the next step we're at, is you take your groups, circle them, and label the groups with typical group names. 2 or 3 or 5, maybe 5 words the most group names.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, so we're like theming.
Yes. There, good word. I might try to remember that one. Yes. Yeah. So that's the step everybody is on. Hopefully finishing now. So do that real quick. Just need one more time. That's look good. All good? Yeah, okay. There's one more step, but I'm waiting for something else to catch up. No, you don't have it.
Yeah, we do. 1, 2, 3.
Fine. That's almost, I don't believe you that you put the most important one on the left to just progress it across. I think
No,
you're
no, no.
lying.
No, no. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, okay. There you said the other way. Okay, so we can get to the rest of the exercises, and since some of you guys have actually worked ahead already, if you didn't already read and do that one, you guys, did you do that? Did you force rank your groups? Bastards. Okay. Well, then, could you see what I hoped, which is it was natural and it was pretty obvious. You said, well, what's the most important thing we're working on? And everybody went, oh, it's this one. Were there any disagreements particularly about that? No, that's the... And that's, I'm just going to keep talking louder and annoy the people next door. That's kind of the point of a lot of this stuff. As you start working as a team, you come to the same understanding of stuff. The post-it exercise, or when I said people argue what group it goes into, that starts going away as the workshop progresses. And people go, well, of course this is our most important feature. Almost nobody will be an outlier because you've been working together to get this stuff worked out. Let me see what else it was. They're behind, but I'm trying to think of. I'd go on anyway. That's fine. I was just going to tell you guys that you can keep working this quietly if you want, but I'm going to try to get else's attention and go on with a little bit of lecture to go to the next step. So, but yeah, either you can give up or you can kind of try to finish the thing off, depending on how happy you are with your data. Okay. Okay, everybody. This is when I said I'm going to rudely interrupt you and make you stop talking so we can go to the next step. So everybody, shut it. Stop. If your neighbor's talking, you hit him in the head until he stops talking. Okay, good. Quieter. So what I was getting to a minute ago was that one of the things I like about this exercise, or really most of the exercises that I use for these kind of things, is it isn't a dead end. It isn't. You don't just get together and go, high five, we had a great team builder thing, and now we all agree, and maybe you stick it on the wall and work it. You transition it directly to the next steps. You should be able to take the information you achieved here and use it immediately. One thing is you should be able to define and measure if you met the goals that you came up with here when you've launched the product, and work towards them as you progress to specify, design, and build it. Objectives and key results, or OKRs if you want to Google that word, are a nice guidance in the sort of goals we're looking for. I don't use the word as a summary in these decks anymore because they're achieved through a formalized process, and this is one of those where in my deck I have a link to the article about it that's kind of competing with or duplicating the exercise we just did. If you prefer that one, no problem, go for it, use that. It's a very similar group building exercise, so it works fine also. If you don't follow, though, if it helps, think of this as a product level version of success criteria. You're going to evolve this into each feature and define features to ensure you're building the right thing as you go along, but we don't mean test-driven design level, detailed in architectural, technical measures you may be used to. These are much higher level success measures, but we're not going to build any of those today because it'll take forever and it's even more tedious just writing little words on post-it note type things. We're going to do more fun scribbling and stuff, I hope, in a minute here. Another thing that's critical, but we're also not going to do today because we don't have the time for it, or actual people because it's a fake product, is knowing your audience. It's crucial to define the user as broadly as possible. Don't just think of all the end users who are the types of end users who could use your product in different ways, though that's important, but internal users, administrators, content creators, people responsible for system maintenance. Whether you're porting legacy systems to new platforms or creating all new technologies from scratch, beyond the digital technology, there's business processes and objectives you need to address as well, or it will fail, as I keep saying to you. Now, if you've thought about personas and you go, but you know, we talked to some guy, or I worked in a team once and it took them 6 months to create a persona. Yes, I know people who have spent years creating personas. Forget the budget for that kind of work, for having somebody go globe-trotting around and interviewing people. Speed alone makes this impossible. You can't have somebody go off for 6 months, come back, and tell you anything useful about your product. Things will have changed by then. But there are many ways to speed it up. This is a term I got from Kelly Goto, though I've been doing it for years, just didn't have a good word for it. I'm not one of the buzzword creator guys, so I just fake it. Just like what we did here, where we gathered the information. If you have a team, or you just even have an idea, you have in mind roughly what type of user is going to use it. And if you, and by you I mean everybody on the project team, once they hear it, they think who would actually use the thing. If you just do an exercise like this thing and think, who are they, how would they use it, you can extract that information. The presumptive information about them. You can get, once you do the real exercise and pay somebody $100,000 to build your personas, find out that you get 80% quality personas out of a few hours sitting down in a room with the team and figuring out what's going on. Often not just because we're good at analyzing other people, but because we worked on this project or this product set at the company for years or decades, so they have a kind of intrinsic idea about what people act like when they're buying diesel engines or scheduling meetings or whatever it is your company does. They've gotten some feedback from the thing. This is the next one I do, and you notice it doesn't have a TM or anything, so it doesn't mean Google has started offering a persona service, though I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Yahoo did. I mean using simple internet searches to flesh it out even more. So I've done this so much, so I can't stand standing here, so I'm going to walk around. This I got called out as doing this well once on one of those. We had a presentation for one of those 18-month created persona projects, and I was trying to be nice about the questions, but other people went, "You took a year and a half? Steven last week spent like 3 days building 4 personas, just sitting at his computer." And it was one of those. We had a basic idea from the business owners what roughly they did. I went, I don't know what the hell a telecom manager is. What are you talking about? Just looked on like LinkedIn groups, read people's resumes, read job postings, found an article or two about, so you want to be a telecom manager, and was able to flesh out a series of perfectly reasonable, complete, like here's a picture of them and that's where they went to school and they have a dog level personas. That ended up being quite accurate. Again, maybe we're up to 90% accuracy because we didn't interview people, but it's easy. Now, in case you're thinking, great, don't need to go out on your client sites anymore. We can do it cheap. Again, even a little bit of ethnography going out into people's actual environments gives you all kinds of great information. So this is one I was doing a largely technical test, which I'll kind of talk about later, for the software that involves this giant dongly thing that's connected. And by the way, I want to know where your shirt came from. I love the car with radio waves coming out of it. And at the end of the thing, we're just talking at something. And find out years into this project, I've only been on a little while, but the rest of the team's been on it for years, that this dusty thing you dug out of the corner is dusty in the corner because they don't, as it turns out, trust any of their digital record keeping or data gathering systems. They all give them bad data. And so there's a room in the back where a cubby hole full of paper for each truck they operate. This is just one. I'm against. Behind me is another larger set of these things. What? They store everything on paper in 2014? Are you kidding me? Huge opportunity, because apparently this is what everybody does. It didn't occur to them when we just asked, what's your biggest problem, to tell us this was a problem. You have to get out there and find out how people are actually using stuff and discover the things that they don't know to tell you. Okay, next step here we're going to do, so we're getting to another exercise, yay, is to start modeling the process. So I'd like you to start to stay as technology agnostic as possible. There are assumptions about the scope of work that are based on technology, how your information is stored, what sort of wearable it is, if you're designing crazy things like that. I have no idea what most of your projects are, so if I say something that makes no sense, just fake it. Don't throw away all these assumptions, just assume the previous exercise covered them. And we're going to build a user task flow. So this is about designing from the user's point of view. And again, here, user means any human in the system or any fake human. The business's point of view, the business owner's point of view, the DevOps guys later. Think of their motivations, their goals, the real broader environment in which they operate. Think about what they already do with their day. Think about if it's like that, if it's a phone app or something else. Is it raining? Are they driving? Are they walking? There are many ways to draw this. I don't care which one you do. Most of all, make sure you talk about, forgot that. Services, data, sensors, networks, and users. So this is a perfectly reasonable diagram that shows flow through things, but there's not a single screen in it. You can do screens if you need to, but it's really not that great an idea because you're talking about multi-channel experiences. It doesn't have to be pretty. Scribbles and boxes. I mean, not on the wall because we have no whiteboards here, like this thing, but you can grab the chart paper, you can scribble on the tables here. You can start with the Post-its. That's not an inviolable diagram. You can pick up those Post-it groupings and draw lines between them and make diagrams out directly out of that exercise. So when I said that they evolve from one step to another, I didn't necessarily mean it informs it. I mean I've successfully taken Post-it diagrams and turned them into task flows. If it helps you to think out the user much more directly, and especially if you're comfortable with your cartooning skills, you can do things like storyboard the thing. And this is actually a combined one. I didn't show it to you partially because it's kind of secret still. This shows other kinds of tasking and by channel where they engage. That's the store, that's at home, other things like that. And feel free to do multiple of these at a time. So you have a team of a largish number of people here on your team. Somebody can draw one diagram, somebody can draw a parallel other type of diagram. Don't do it separately, kind of sit right next to each other and everybody else talk and say, wait, if he picked up the phone there, what does it do to the data sources? So what does it do to those? This is a slightly more formalized diagram, and I took out all the words so you can't see what it's about. But explicitly keep in mind, links out to the rest of the internet, device features, we're going to use the dialer. It goes out and does that. Where's the data stored? How do we get location? I oftentimes do this kind of thing and here's kind of the user-centric task flow. Here's all the external systems that we're going to link to. Or have to explicitly talk about it again. We're back to those high-level diagrams. Because people, if you just give them basic features, like we're going to link the phone to the engine, they go, great, and then that's it. They see phone engine. And forget things like, well, maybe we should sync it up so that we can retrieve the information and do smart things and tell our marketing team where people are using our products and let them get to it online and sync up to when they lose their phone and need another one and so forth. And this gets very much to what I'm talking about with the user-centric, business-centric design. Informs your technology in really useful ways that you're not going to get if you just define it as connect a phone through a Bluetooth dongle to an engine. Let's see, what do we got next? Ta-da, do that. Like I said, we'll give you, 20 minutes or something like that to do this thing. Should be plenty of time now that there's no fussing and you have an idea. You should use that forced rank thing you just did, where we're going to build this feature first. Think about that. Draw those most important features first. Draw the second most important feature next. That kind of thing. Questions, though?
Okay. I'm sure you're going to get to this later, but I'm an API developer, and I'm kind of wondering, how do APIs play into, when we're doing this? Or is this supposed to just be, independent of APIs, and then APIs come in later? Or are we supposed to be thinking about APIs the entire time?
I forgot to actually make you raise your hand earlier and answer answer that before we started the thing. So this isn't a software developer-y class per se. Yes, sorry. There will be a little bit more discussion that I have a few more diagrams that discuss in more detail, but you're starting to, it's one of those where we're kind of designing everything at the same time. You should be conceiving of the data architecture, data linkage, where is the storage. This isn't the diagram, but there's one I did where we had so much data we had to archive everything, and so by the time we got to here, we already had the concept of of archiving, and we had already had meetings with the Oracle guys about, well, what does archive mean? How long is the data what is the delay for archive versus live storage? This one, we have a local data store, which is on the handset, and a remote one, and then there's cloud. at this level, you're starting to think about it. We're not necessarily, we're not writing code for the thing, but we're thinking, what are the impacts on it? What is the common system? Like I said, we're technology agnostic. So this is, everybody gets this screen, everybody gets this data, everybody gets location. And we're not worried about whether it's GPS location or the user has to type it or whatever silly ass thing we do like that. And so you've got to start to think, yes, here we're not really going to address it because we're doing it so fast. But in reality, you're going to start taking notes to say, I see a problem because the data store is going to be too big to store on a mobile handset locally. And you have made a requirement that it be able to work in the middle of the jungle in Brazil. I actually did projects like this. And therefore, problem. We don't necessarily have a solution, but we have a note, a problem, and we're going to have to design around that. And that should inform the design later on. Close enough? Okay, good. Then I'll stop yammering at you guys. Other questions, because I want to make sure we do the right thing before I send you off into the wilds with pens. I have one answer. You can draw on the tabletops, or there's paper. You can, or the chart paper. You can rip off giant sheets of paper, or if you want more manageable bits of paper, take some of this. Here, pass some along. Really? Everybody's very quiet. I'm suspicious. There should be loud talking or at least questions going, no, that didn't make any sense. Everybody good? Okay. I hope. Timer, 110. I just can't keep track of the time, so don't completely run out. At the end of this, we'll be close to it. Just short halfway. Okay. So that's good. Remind me in 20 minutes. 20 minutes is we'll give 20 minutes, 20 minutes on this thing. Okay. And I can interrupt and say, let's take a break. We'll come back after that. Okay. All right. You're so nice. Remember people.
So it's saying, assuming that they still have something active
I have no money.
I mean, in the future, can be like user destination shop. Again, that like start with, but you still need like your notification thing, but then the way it goes is like right now it's still all software development. I would just connect it. Right now, it's you have to connect it. Yeah, that's the breakout. I mean, everything is like has to be a centralized server. Future will be you have to be very much a location from where things come from. So you need a whole lot of information.
So like the other thing is sometimes the hope.
Yeah, that's the whole.
I see that you have now this was the reason put in this report. Was called responded and said, I want to also report it. You can actually see what you very interesting. We also did another flow chart real quick.
Like that one, I had an argument with the, this is several years ago. Basically, all we got was just by the people in the one camera store. Is they put my lens cap back on that I bought for something. I took it off. Right? Put it back on. They put it back on. Yeah. Absolutely. This is the pictures, right? Come on. Well, I have this actual poster holder and the actually tell me my camera doesn't have business. I can't even get it back on there. I mean, they almost nothing left. They do have lots of filters. Price line. The one like the local this. They don't have a lot of stuff. I got a tabletop typewriter for half price. Really? Yeah, pretty nice. And yeah, they have a little bit of other junk around there.
Yeah, I got like Gorilla Grips.
Okay. Really? There was one kind of silly. I got.
They're funny looking.
Anyway, something funny a little bit a minute. I tried it, but it actually does work. Yeah, it was good. But it's my fault.
Oh well. I'll just have to keep my eyes out.
Who's good? Collaborate.
How do I build time into this?
No, I
It's such a great product. It's simple and good.
Okay, since some of you guys are starting to get done, we'll take when you're ready. We'll take around 10-minute break when most everybody comes back. I'm not going to count, so don't be too late. When most everybody comes back, we'll talk about what we did and move on to the next exercise. But I don't want you to squirm in your seats or pass out or anything. So go hit the bathroom, get a pop from the break room, etc. If you want, you can stay here if you want to.
Test, test, 1, 2, 3.
That's super cool. Can I like pick specific like? It's just moving from one screen to the next. There's no like interactivity at all. Like, the actual like elements in that picture, right? Not that I need it, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, only to the extent that something different happens. You can do it. It depends on how many pictures you want. So I would say when you tap in the middle of it, the dialog box pops up. You just have to make sure, like, your artist has to make a second image that's the picture that the artist would pop up. So where after one of these is a lot, how it is, and then that is pretty cool. And then the stakeholder can hold up Pleasant and say, well, I want that. I want this instead. Not use all your, it may still take some time to do, but it's not because you can get it done in, you can get it a lot quicker. So this is what I'm trying to do. We have this product here that sells like that. But we do have design in our scale and we're I want to get him to give me some design time. We'll do some white building design. So I mean, in your PNG model, so much fun to take that to senior management and say, is this what you want? Here's what we can do.
Exactly. It's super easy to at least get the concepts out there.
And then they can say, no, yes, that's great. Anyway, here's my tip today.
Thank you very much. It's super helpful.
Make the video go socialize. I need food. I gotta give it some time. I only know the
Okay, hopefully some people, whoops, microphone. Okay, hopefully, I mean, I know we lost a few people because there's other cool, awesome events next door, but hopefully a few more will come back. We're just gonna, but I want to get started so we can do the next thing. If your team, if they don't come back by the time we start the exercise, chit chat, maybe we need to lose a team or something, so we, 2 people might be a little sad by themselves over there. So first, anybody completely lost, baffled by either the exercise or where the hell I'm going with this entire thing? Or did this make some sense and you're happy with what the direction is and stuff like that? And I see kind of non-committal. Yeah, sure. Come on. Tell me if what's not working, because I will explain either what I failed to explain right, or that we'll get to it next time, or sorry, with the next exercise. No, nobody wants to raise their hand and say. Oh, okay, fine. Well, looking around, it all looks sensible to me. I've seen a lot of the usual people like, yeah, this is awesome. We'll go ahead and build this tomorrow. So, we'll have to do that next time. We'll have to integrate a hackathon to the end of the thing, and you can actually build your clever products. Okay, we're going to go more or less straight this time into the next drawing exercise. So as usual, just ask for stuff. Need more papers, markers, whatever, ask, and we'll figure it out. Next one we're going to draw is going to be much more specific. Before we can get there, we have to stop to understand again. Make sure you're discussing designing the details the way the users actually can consume them. So these are a series of little hints I like to do. Some of these are the bullet points up front where I said, this is not a process, do this all the time. One of them is work at device scale. That's my general rule I've done, which is based on mobile versus desktop type things. But it works, it's true for everything. So don't just think about device scale, think about device context. Or what is scale, really, if it's a watch. I happen to know the Pebble guys designing this thing on my wrist they had a bunch of printouts, kind of like that, of how big the watch should be. So when they were drawing the phone screens, they didn't get out of hand and try to pack it with features. But simple stuff is to download little stencils or just trace your phone and draw out the right scale like that. There are little stencils you can download from everywhere, and you can buy notebooks and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. Get it on the handset one way or the other. Yeah. Where is it? Here, this will be fun. Let's see how hard it is to unlock my phone with the fingerprint reader. Yeah, it worked. When you get down, whether you take photos or sketches, or when you get to digital designs, you can put them on your phone. That's not an app. That's just screenshots out of my wireframe one to put on the app so that I can pass it around the room during conferences, and you can take it if you really want to, instead of putting everything up in PowerPoint on the wall. It's hard to evaluate small interfaces at giant screen size. It's hard to evaluate things that are held in your hand at this kind of length when you're looking at them from way over there. So don't let people do that. Some other point I had for this. Yeah, it's good enough. Okay, I assume you all know the story of Jeff Hawkins, even if you have no idea what his name is. First, I have to know, does anybody recognize the name? Okay, great. He's one of / the founder of Palm back in the day. They developed the modern PDA, and therefore, in many ways, the smartphone. So, you've at least heard the story, I'm sure. He carried around what is described as a block of wood. It's actually a real prototype, as some people insist on calling them. A pre-prototype. Get it? Cute, huh? So it was this thing. They actually had a basic kind of concept for what the design might work like. You notice it has way too many buttons on the bottom compared to the later one. But yeah, he wrapped it in paper and tape and pretended to take notes in the thing. Carried around to meetings. For a good reason. He had the impression from a previous project he'd worked on and a couple others that all the other PDAs were way too difficult to use. They were these giant boxy things you couldn't you couldn't put them in your pocket. They had other problems like battery life, so he had other constraints. But he tried the form factor, by simply having his guys make him one poorly, and then carry it around. And whenever he's in a meeting, he went, I will totally make a note of that, and he would pretend to take a note. Now me, I'd have actually taken a note, which I kind of did. So this is before the iPad came out, so maybe I'm dating myself now. We built an e-reader thing. And without easy-to-use general-purpose computer like that, because I had a Windows PC, but it was, tablet, but it was like that thick, so it didn't really help to kind of emulate what it was like carrying around. We just went to paper. So I went in my shop and made a plywood e-reader. Not the right dimensions even. I made it half a sheet of paper. So you folded a piece of paper, shoved it in there, scribbled on it, did printouts, put it on there. And that was, the kind of thing we would bring even to, well, not me, because I wasn't that high level, but because I was just a vendor. But would be brought to the client, the money guys meeting, and they would show them, it will look like this. Yay. Now we have an idea what it is. We're not just showing off shiny drawings up on PowerPoint. And you can continue similar stuff. This gets into Internet of Things stuff, but there's a wearable I'm working on, which is too high-tech and cool for me to possibly bring over here and show you. But whenever we're having a meeting, there's a pile of them, because they're still in a little prototype phase, on the table. They don't do anything. They're like hunks of metal that are the right shape. They don't blink and buzz when you connect your phone to them or anything like that, because they're not there yet. But having them there is great. You can go pick it up and go, well, when the call arrives, and start thinking in the user's context. Behind everything, there are wires and radio antennas and batteries and sensors and integrated circuits and adhesives and everything like that. If you're building for the real world and don't plan for when the world intrudes on your design, you're going to fail. Understand your technology and check whether whatever you're building is sensible and makes sense and how your design is going to be impacted by this stuff. You're probably never going to use GPS, actually, for your digital products. Shocked? No amazement? Come on. So when you say you're clearly lying, it's because you're going to use precise location. There's a difference. We like to say GPS, but not really. This has either 2 or 3, I keep forgetting to look it up, GNSSs, as they're called. It uses the Russian GLONASS, and I think it uses Compass now also, at least when you're in China where those satellites have coverage. Location service is different from GPS. If you don't know the difference, you're going to do the wrong thing with it. Display technology. If you zoom into Photoshop, that's what you get a little square of different colors, and that's what a display looks like if you zoom in. No, they look like this, or something else, because there are several importantly different display technologies. And these, whether you're using the wrong location service, the way you build build stuff to display on your screen, can have significant impacts, not just on how pretty it is or how useful, but things like battery life. Do you kill the battery in an hour, or does it last all day? If you kill the battery in an hour for your sports tracker, like one I was using just the other day, then, well, I'm not going to use that anymore. Now, your product isn't so successful now, is it? Radios are a favorite of mine. I can yammer about this if anybody's interested. Come on, raise your hand. Tell me yes or no. Should we hear more about technology stuff? Yes. Who doesn't? Yay. Okay. Mobile networks are slow, right? It's a problem compared to your desktop, compared to Wi-Fi or wired, of course, networks. Everybody agree? Wrong. They're mostly not about, broadly speaking, orders of magnitude at least, similar speed. But they have terrible latency. And so they seem even slower if you use many of the most common, especially responsive things. You have a zillion images. You have 5 JavaScripts and so forth. Every one of those takes maybe a second to retrieve. And suddenly your page takes 2 minutes before anybody can see much of anything on it. So you can easily solve this. You can realize, oh, well, it's got to work on mobile network also, so maybe I should do one JavaScript, and maybe I should embed it. I've even done things with base64 images, because we used all CSS, and I had like one image for the logo, and I just made it base64, and now we have one image. Sorry, one file, one HTML file gets called now. And the exact same kind of bloated 1 meg page takes like 6 seconds to load instead of 45 seconds. Easy stuff, if you think about it and know it. Connectivity, in general, may be such an issue that no client-level work can solve it at all. This is something I actually drew. Yeah, it looks better when it's not blown out. Okay. I got to stop looking over my shoulder at what the slides actually look like. So we had a service that was supposed to operate in North Africa and the Middle East, and figured out, well, I guess throughout Africa was the big problem. And latency and so forth was an even bigger issue. You're going to go all the way back to a server farm in Northern California to get the data? That's not going to work for anybody. So discussed how we need to build a set of server farms, or mirror sites, or I guess hire them, which is what they ended up doing, and put little data pipeways back to the telecom services so that when you're on your mobile phone, it just has a few millisecond hop over to the local network. Instead of going all the way across the ocean on the one cable that covers that half of the continent. Yes, I'm still just a boring old UX designer person, and I put this as the third page in one of my important concept deck things. They went, oh, okay, we'll go look into that, and solved it. Because that's part of the experience, as we said. There are constraints, and you can build a data system that goes, okay, I will wait 2 minutes for all this data to download. You cannot tell a user, just keep waiting, it'll be fine. What do you got to do that's better than waiting for my data product to load? They're going to go away. So you can solve issues. Okay, so in case you think this is all on the implementation side, so you'll worry later, well, wrong. Software design, interaction design, even the information architecture and data concepts can induce failure if you're not careful. I already mentioned Evernote's various competitors that failed to think about the data concepts, right? But there are many other cases. I would love to quote some numbers from Twitter, but I could never find any. I mentioned briefly earlier, and I did it briefly because of this, that Twitter was an SMS service only when it first launched. Well, they forgot that a couple years ago, and they started putting all their features on their website such that they didn't work through their APIs, plural, by the way. They had a bunch of kind of conflicting APIs. Their app kind of didn't work right, et cetera, et cetera. They finally realized, like I said, I haven't seen numbers, but they've admitted out loud to keep customers, oh, wait, we forgot that we have more than a website. So don't worry, we're going to improve all of our products now. Because they were seeing drop-offs in the use rates for these other things. If you don't give an equivalent experience everywhere, people will notice and stop using it. I can keep going with that stuff, but right now I'm working on a revision of a system. Actually, I just got an email saying I need to go look at the revision that uses this thing that I was waving around earlier. It connects to a vehicle. This is a prototype one. It's going to be much smaller and less dongly and crappy when it's done. And we built the system a particular way. It gets live updates from the engine monitoring software. And after a lot of all the stuff I've been talking about here, we sat in the room and we talked through things. We drew the diagrams. One of the diagrams I showed you was about that, actually. And then we built it, and then we couldn't figure out what it was doing because it doesn't actually work like that. It only goes, oh, I've grabbed some data. And then you have to push a button to grab more data. And then it waits like 2 minutes to retrieve it and stuff like that. And so we half-assed our way through it, and we kind of changed some names, and we put some dialogues and some delay indicators, and then we threw it out in front of users, and it was a total disaster. Didn't work at all. Because it implied still by the way, I can't show you the actual app, so that's why you're looking at a big grid of screens. But we actually put it in front of people, and we videoed them with little video classes. I don't have the money to do eye tracking glasses, so just video classes. So we could actually see exactly what they were doing, and we recorded it in their environment, out in the truck shop or out in the field. And yeah, they were baffled, and it was not, it would sometimes say on the screen, you got to refresh or please wait while we update the latest version. Didn't matter. Architecturally, we'd built it from the ground up. We'd gone through all these exercises as though it was live versus history. Things like that. So we had to, after getting the bad user test, prove that we'd screwed up. We had to kind of sort of start over. Had to go back through the whole design documents and reconsider everything. And it involved things like removing the navigation structure. We had to throw it all away and start over with that. We had to do all the first screens you did when you set up the system. Had to completely redo those. Fairly significant changes from what the developers were thinking was simple. Oh, no, it doesn't live update it. Oh, did I not mention that? No, it's critically important information. So if you don't understand a system, you will fail. Even me, even this late. Okay, so with all those fears in your mind, let's design a system. And now I don't mean an ecosystem, this agnostic system. I mean a single or a handful of actual systems. Take that task flow. Like I said, you can either work as tiny groups, though I doubt you want to be by yourself, if that's your team. So join another team or something like that, and pick a couple platforms. In reality, you would do this probably serially is the way to do it. You'd pick every one of your platforms would have been identified organically as you went through this exercise. You'd have a few in mind, kind of like I said, the presumptive personas. You go, well, it's definitely on the web, and there's going to be a mobile app. But you'd figure out, based on doing some of these long task flow exercises, oh, well, we need to send them a notification, and there's a reset email and stuff like that. So you'd have all these you'd have many of the other platforms identified organically. Here, we're just going to pick 2 or 3 of them as examples. Like I said, try at least 2, but preferably 3 platform interfaces. It can be widely different platforms like desktop, mobile, TV, smartwatch, or it can just be things like it's SMS, it's an app notification, it's the app. Because we're thinking about data sources and so forth, I want you to do something where we use similar data, looking at your little chart there, that comes up in different ways. Let me see, where's the one? I did that badly. My notes are messed up. That's the only thing I'm talking about. It's a pretty diagram, isn't it? You can think about things at architectural level if you want as well. Annotate your drawing. So at the very least, don't just have an interface drawing. And you should never just have an interface drawing. This is where I can start ranting, but I'll try to avoid it too much, about prototyping your designs versus specifying them. When you get to multiple platforms, it's very hard to find an ecosystem developer, as I might call them. You can't find a guy who can build every platform. So therefore, it's hard for him to sketch in code. You end up, if you want to think about things in a multi-channel way, you're going to end up having to draw them and at least note them, if not fully specify them, and then get somebody to build it once you're sure you know what you're building. But besides specifying, it drags and scrolls and stuff like that, think about stuff like how does the content interrelate? This one's talking about the fact that if you can't get data, this arrow to the left is if a particular piece of data isn't available, don't not show it, fall back to the next crappier level of information. So in this particular case, we fall all the way back to just straight up boring SMS. No pictures, no nothing. But we give them the data, and then they don't miss out on, I can't remember what this was, whether it was just information or a sales opportunity, we always give them some information. But you can see the grid that you only get special media built into the app. You don't have a notification on the mobile web because there's no such thing as notifying in the web, really. There's no point in popping up an alert box because you're already in there. That kind of thing. Let's see what else we got. Nope, okay. That's it. Draw something. Questions, as usual. Let's start with that. Who's baffled? And this goes a little bit to the answer about somebody said, oh, wait, when are we going to design APIs? That's what that diagram is supposed to be talking about. Think about your data. Don't just think of the interface. Think of the interface as relates to your data sources, to how you're going to get the information between a data store and the various interfaces. You think bidirectionally. The user enters information, it flows down, back up, it gets processed. You don't have to write the code for that, but you should put a little box that says, I am software. I'm going to parse the user data, check for errors. I see beard stroking and stuff, but everybody good? Or? Especially with the team smaller, I can walk around more easily, so ask me if you're baffled by something like choices about, wait, how do I pick which platform I'm going to work on? We'll talk about your project and we can work on that. Work on it yourself?
Yeah, it's working.
Oh, you do have it. Okay, and you're going to consider 3 people a good enough team to work? Okay, good enough. We'll make some time.
Like, I'm a, as a user, I may not be ready to look at other people. I'm trying to get people. That, I mean, to start somewhere.
That's a good point. If you started, if you're on SMS and it's saying back when you use those keywords, if you're on a phone that doesn't have the internet, suggestions.
I don't know. So my goal is to find a way, which is actually a little step. That's one option, right? I want to find a way to target web software processing. Yes, you go back there over the words. That's one option. Ask the crowd, help me out. Ultimately, my goal, I can just start entering my own.
Alright, so for SMS we would have,
I'm not sure I heard the right thing, but if you're talking about that donors for all, just going to list out what each of it happens to be a platform.
Just, yeah, you're gonna have,
That's actually, this is one of those where I would limit it. So instead of doing a 6-week long class for each of them, I would I very, very often start with interfaces like this, like that exactly. That I told people and do a bullet list of, you know, like, I usually do it digitally.
yeah, I think we want to see that.
But yeah, where is that a box? The list of what the domain is, but you links out of this is the bullet list also.
You could do the whole feature set.
Display items, interactive items, data, and then from there, draw actual interface. Once I figured out what's common and so forth. So yeah, that's kind of like, you don't have to draw pretty down. You just do bullet lists of all features on the system.
how long will it be before we're, doing mobile first designers for the,
I don't actually buy it, that's why I'm doing this thing. This is my thing, so, I think each, and Lucy's, one of the guys are talking, we kind of conflates the web, the internet with the web. So, he draws massive conclusions, and we read it, and we go, wait, he's only talking about the web, that actually won't work for. So, whatever we're talking about.
Yeah, we can print it. I mean,
Because we may say, but I want to show you why we're taking phrases people were using all the time, so I'm not as cool.
maybe like you send it to your email, right? Yep. So then you can jump branches, you can jump from node to node.
Doesn't sound familiar.
It's like, here's a pile of PNGs, here's some images of how it looks.
Oh yeah, never used that one, but yeah, there are lots of things like that that I do. Yeah. I usually often have a list of these things available to everybody. Yeah. Yeah, I mostly ended up just doing that kind of thing. So this is an example. So these guys asked, like, oh, I don't really feel like drawing. This is real, so don't anybody tell who the, oh, good, the name of the company is on, I don't think. Okay, good. This is something I'm actually working on approximately now, where I started with not, sorry, as I was explaining to them, I don't burden you guys with the compressed 6-week UX designer course, so I skip this step. But before I do UI sketches, and then which is before I do high fidelity sketches, I often start like this thing. This little bits of flow, boxes, bullet list of all the features that'll be visible and all the interactive features on there. So you don't have to draw an interface. You can just make a bullet list of junk, and that works fine too. And for this level, it works very well. This is a very information-centric product. That's all it is. It's about gathering and organizing information. Think of it as a corporate Evernote if you want. And so, little sub-boxes like admins get this thing, and start sketching stuff like, oh, it should be sub-tiers and so forth. So I'll leave that up on the screen if that helps a little bit to think about stuff too. But yeah, good point. Thanks for something else. I'm telling you what it's there for. Yeah, that's why I showed off the things I don't know is. The tools. Yeah.
I've written like these generic apps that let you hide buttons, but these tools let even faster use. And it can.
So maybe I can try it. Let me take my card. You can email me the link for that one. I'll try that because there's like 6 of them that I've used. The problem is they're not hugely better than just scrolling through a slideshow. In one way, which is that every page, every view needs to be drawn. But because of reusability, at the very least, I like things like dialogues and menus to be layered items on top of it. And you can't do that. None of the tools do that. You have to take a full screenshot. Yes, I have to make my own second image.
To show layered.
Yep. And it doesn't keep, they don't tend, one of them might, but I've never found one that even keeps buttons consistent. So like, what if my back is always here? Or my submit is always here? So do these everywhere unless I delete it. No, I have to do every page image. And every time I've done that, I might as well just code the thing. Because I've done that instead. I built HTML apps. It's a total demo like that, but I just write it as code. And then I run it, there's HTML code, and then I run it as a full screen browser. And it looks like an app as far as you can tell. It's just not.
Because that's useful for people to flip through things to get an idea.
Yep, but you can do the paper prototyping. I often do digitally on the phone now.
What I'm currently doing is finding apps I like, and I just want to run out and copy them, and then say, look at this, and then I'm taking screenshots of that and whiting out their logo, putting in my logo, because that's pretty down and dirty.
Yeah. Well, one of the things is a lot of times for these things that is I'm showing off even to the end user.
It feels almost like the entirety.
So when I have no budget, like I'll go over to my friends who do a similar job and plug them in their shop. Or I did what I called a carnival intercept the other day. So they go to the mall, doing a carnival in our towns, and just bug random people at the carnival to run stuff. And so it doesn't take much. Turns out the slideshow, even though you can't click, like I'll do the computer and I'll slide it. They'll figure out for 2 slides that I would select this in the next project, and they'll start doing it.
So you almost don't need to wire it up.
Yeah.
You can see slideshow. Is there a
But I'm
trick
getting
to
really
make it
responsive.
point to make the slide the phone?
No.
If you run it.
When they get things like Power, yeah, you would think people would be that smart. Yes, so therefore, yeah, PowerPoint presentations prototypes aren't bad for desktop, but they're really equivalent there. PDFs also, you can make interactive PDFs. The interactive PDF readers on the mobile aren't really the same. They don't necessarily transition the same way. So if anybody would do one of those, that would also be reasonable. A custom tool for the phone. One of the ones we're used to. That's great, but I can't do that. That would be stupid.
I wonder if Apple does a huge make ours their PowerPoint.
No, PageMakers, the old one. I don't know what you're thinking of, but PageMaker PowerPoint. It's definitely called something else.
Anyway, that thing.
Yes.
PowerPoint E, but sort of it does what PowerPoint doesn't, which is, why can't I just shrink my canvas to the dimensions? That's what I mean though, is that I'm then export it as.
I think okay, one thing is I think it doesn't is it's only got, it's very Apple-y, it's got the fixed stuff. So it only wants you to do so many sizes, so there's just no such thing as doing an arbitrary size. Two is I don't think it runs on phone at all. And three for me is most of my projects, if I'm gonna do just a straight mobile app or website, they are on my Android version. Because of the scale. There's so many Android users. Almost everybody is doing it. Better. That's the Pages is their crappy WordPad. Keynote. No, it's good, I mean, but it's not consistently used enough and so forth. We're right back.
And I have Keynote on my Apple. Ooh, you're giving me good ideas.
So one is almost just a copy. Second is saying, okay, I'm thinking of doing something.
Are you leaving? You leaving now that I'm going to make everybody talk?
No, mine just showed up.
Oh, come on. He told him to be here. Okay, now that we're actually quite on time, working quite well on time, and now that it's a smaller group and it's easier to do, I think we will do, as I said, sharing your ideas. So since he started talking to me about it, I think you guys can go first. You can either come up to the front so you're on video, or you can just stand up where you are.
We might just stand up.
Okay, if you're embarrassed by your idea. And so so just the basic thing, I want you to make sure that you get rid of the pitch, like you're the elevator pitch I made you guys do earlier. You can do the evolved version of it here, but give it a little quick 20, 30 second, what does it basically do? And then show where you are now with the point in mind. Kind of think about it as though your R&D team is now done with it, and you need to integrate it with enterprise functionality, and that, even if it isn't that kind of product. So you have, I know, yeah, but it's that kind of thing. So explain how it's going to benefit your organization, the user, and what you need technically out of things. So that, the point of the exercise we're doing here, where it has all those levels here, try to hit all those high points. You don't have to do them as a bullet point check off, just kind of keep that in mind. And I'm going to make you do it on a microphone.
Oh wow. Okay, so we might sort of tag team this. So we'll be smart about our microphone moving around. Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Then I'll hand off to you. So the idea behind this was kind of a crowdsourced to-do list. Oh, I preferred. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of a crowdsourced to-do list. You enter in any goal that you might have. It would typically be a large goal to start, like I want to buy a house, I want to buy a car, I want to get fit, and that goal would then go up into a crowdsourced database and allow the public at large to identify different ways that they subtask that out and accomplish that goal, and offer feedback on best next steps and how to break those steps down into progressively smaller steps until they're manageable in an intelligent way. And talk about use cases.
So in the next step, what we kind of did is we looked at the ecosystem, right? So what are the different pieces that touch this sort of activity, right? So we thought about, from a perspective of, do you talk to friends? Do you talk to family to, get fit, or to find a school to go to, or you go to Google, right? Or you just kind of do it without thinking. But there's different activities, right? There's places that you might go to seek out help. There's maybe you're at work, and just by nature of working, you kind of gain that knowledge. So we thought about kind of the ecosystem of the users. Then we thought about the different things that they use to accomplish these various tasks, right? So are they looking at pictures, or going to like an Instructables do-it-yourself sort of thing if it's building something? Are they just, kind of using their device, right? So then what we did is we thought about the various phases, right? So the first thing that you kind of do if you're just completely lost is you're finding goals. So you might just look at, the things that other people are doing, the things that people are accomplishing. Beyond the high-level goal, there's decomposition. There's tasks that need to be accomplished, and that's kind of where we got to from a decomposition perspective. And then, obviously, you accomplish things, right? So there's progress. There's movement towards the goal, and that was really important from a visual perspective, although we didn't get to quite the level of fidelity of being able to draw out what that progress looks like. We just thought about it from entering a goal, responding to a goal, and viewing goals. And we were thinking about the back of the house. How does this interact with a database? How does it interact, if you're pushing to different devices? And I don't know, Jasmine, if you have anything to add to that. So we're still sort of moving around and thinking about things, but we're moving towards a direction, which is always good.
What, you aren't completely done after an hour? Come on. Okay.
Yeah.
So anybody have a specific question about that thing? Challenge it? Think it's terrible? Confused? No, nothing? Okay, well then it's your turn to talk then instead.
Thanks.
Similar kind of thing, just roughly what it does and where you are, and don't feel free to bring up any issues you've had trying to elaborate on it in this short time frame too. Whatever you're not done with, or questions you have about process too. It doesn't have to just be on your project.
Okay, sure. Our idea, we had an idea, actually it was two ideas that we lumped together because they seemed to be well matched together. The first was basically putting together an app for people who are in a store and help me out here. They're in a store and they can't figure out what an ingredient is. Let's say they're in an Indian store and they see an ingredient and they say, "Hey, this looks kind of interesting. I think I'd like to make a meal out of this, but I don't really know how to put together a meal like that." And so they can take a picture of that ingredient, and the app would go out and search on the web, find some recipes that use that ingredient and offer up those recipes, and also offer the other ingredients to make a meal or a number of different meals. The user could actually choose which meal they liked the most. That's sort of the adventurer persona that we developed, that would be actually standing in the store and try and find something that way. The other is the lazy chef persona, who would be standing in their kitchen, and they would have like 2 ingredients on their shelves and they don't really know what to make with these 2 things. And so they could type it into the app and the app would come up with other ingredients that they would need to make something with, and also some substitutions if that was needed, like you could substitute cream for milk or vice versa, things like that, so that they could actually put together a meal right in their own kitchen, or at least tell them what they needed to buy from the store. You want to finish talking about how we put together the different platforms, or?
Okay, sure.
Okay.
So we didn't want to leave anyone out, so we started with SMS. So if you didn't have a smartphone or with a fancy internet web browser, you could just text some key code, have flour, milk, and eggs, and it will come back with the top 3 or 5 recipes you could use with your ingredients, and you would choose one. It would send you a text with the actual recipe. The next option would be a mobile web, and it has all the same capabilities as SMS, where you put in your ingredients, you get some lists, might have some filtering controls on there, like gluten-free or only organics or something like that. It will give you the recipe, and at that point you could take the recipe and share it, maybe send the recipe to your email so you have it for later, text it to yourself so you have it for later, and then it would also direct you to the local grocery stores where you could go and buy the ingredients that you might be missing. And then the last piece was a native app for mobile or tablet, and this would have a lot of the same functionality, but it would integrate with the camera, so you could scan like the barcode or take a picture of a product instead of typing in all your ingredients. I think that's about sums it up.
You bring up a good point when you said that you integrated two different ideas in. These a lot of these processes are very good at doing that as well. It's another thing I didn't do because it kind of gets to politics, enterprise, ecosystem sillinesses and stuff. But you'll often come up with an idea, or run across 2 or 3 ideas that came up in broadly the same time range. And they're being pursued by different teams. If you think they're similar enough, and you can work through it to the point where you can get them all in the same room, you can use tasks like this, stick things on, similar to the let's put everything on a Post-it note, to try to find the overlaps. Again, organically. If you can get the people in the room, even if they kind of hate each other at first, they start working together and you can find out the common ground and then help decide, are they the same project? Are they in the same ballpark? And but we branch them out like this. Can they share features? Stuff like that. Oh, any questions for them? Comments? Remember, I get all profits from all the ideas you came up with in this session. So try the next group then.
So yeah, our idea. So we came up with a daily fantasy sports application specifically for soccer. So we kind of looked at it as this was the one main sport that didn't have this platform already available. So from a perspective of for empathy mapping purposes or persona, we approached it from a couple angles. One is there are very hardcore fans both on the soccer front and in fantasy sports. There's also the casual fan, so we think this was a great way to kind of pitch the daily element. The other one was like fatigued users. So for fantasy sports, there's two really different kind of sects. One is there's a traditional way you draft and then you play throughout the season, or in the daily realm, you're able to draft for that week of competition or that day. So if it's football, you draft on football Sunday, you play that day, and then it's over on Monday, and you repeat the process the next week. So we were really kind of looking at it. We brought up a great point of people who play traditional fantasy sports become fatigued throughout the year. If I lose the first 6 games of my fantasy league, I no longer want to play. So now I'm able to. This is an outlet. This is a great way to continue play without the commitment, without staying in the league. And then the last one was like timely fans. So especially for soccer. Hopefully, a lot of you know that the World Cup is coming up next month. So people who are looking for a fantasy sports outlet for something like the World Cup, we're able to bring that to them. So from there, we were kind of figuring out what were the biggest challenges for us for features, and then being able to bring that mobile. And I think the biggest thing was making it mobile, because for fantasy sports, people can't sit on the couch and watch sports all day. Sometimes you can. A lot of times, especially in the soccer world, you can't because of time restraints and everything. So we really wanted to come from a mobile perspective first, and then the other big thing was we wanted to incorporate a paywall. So being able to actually wager hard money on these games was one of the biggest other features, and being able to live update using SMS, push notifications, and those sorts of things to live update the users for their money that they're using in the competition was a big focus for us. Was there anything else you wanted? I think that's kind of where we were, yeah.
Okay, I'd say you never need to make an excuse for mobile. It's always good to have the use case thing, like you thought about it. But besides the fact we're at a mobile conference, yeah, there are huge numbers of people using mobile for day-to-day purposes. I like to quote the numbers that up to 75% of Americans use mobile phones as their primary or only method to access the internet. They don't have a computer at home anyway, and that's in the U.S. where we're all supposed to be, rich and have computers in our trailers. So yeah, it's huge everywhere else in the world. This would be a great product for to explore for that kind of thing. That you have multiple types of users in different contexts, third world users with bad data connections. So that'd be an interesting one. Have you to argue about your SMS only mobile web and mobile app versions of things, as well as language. It would be hard to launch a product like yours in only 1 or 12 even languages. It's going to be hugely complicated making it in the 80 language version, then you still get people complaining. So good. So I assume you don't want to be the only presenter of your idea, so we'll leave you guys out, I guess. Anything else? Any other points or anything? Don't worry, yes, I have a few more things to talk about, but unless we want to keep drawing this stuff, we're done with the drawing phase of things. We'll just give you some wrap-up stuff. And questions, you can interrupt me anytime you want with questions. Okay, people keep being, either I'm being amazingly brilliant and I've answered everything you ever wanted to know, or everybody's shy today. Let me have that back. I guess I should get back to the actual slideshow now, huh? Okay. Okay, so I've mentioned this again, but I'm going to keep harping on it. So when you get out in the world and start drawing like anything like this, doing these kind of processes at your work or something, keep remembering to think of it as a step in the as an extension of the previous work you've done. This one, for example, is a mobile phone app. I don't think I've talked about this one yet. Tell me if I did. I think I might have just practiced it. This is not dissimilar from some of the like the one you guys were talking out there. It's got a basic SMS one. It's got a what is this? I guess I lost my labels. Anyway, mobile web. I thought somebody said something. Okay, and various, you know, and then the app progresses, and it's got the context. Even though it's all screenshot things, it's this guy walking down the street of Nairobi actually doing the thing. It's got, oh, here we entice them to go download the app through the store. So it's partially up here just to remind you of pragmatism, things that earlier in the process than you might want to, if you start really embracing this sort of thought, or if you're just a data architect or whatever, early in the process than you'd want to draw in UI, you're often required to because the bosses want to see, well, what'll it look like? I need something to show the stakeholders. You can do things like this that actually both show you shiny screens and communicate the principle of it's multi-channel, that they progress from one to the other, we upsell them, we make money off of it because they buy the thing. Yeah, that's good enough. Okay, did a lot of thinking of what's positive, what's a good feature, and I heard you guys talking about that stuff now. Another one to think of is what's an anti-good feature. Things that will make the users do too much work. We think of that a lot, like why would they type? I still have things like this. Why would you type your address into anything on a handset? You have location service, so default to. Don't even default to filling it in. Default to just give them the map, for example, of their current location. They can always change, but otherwise. But don't forget things that actually break the world. Are you making them mistrust the system in some way? See that a lot with, that was weird, noise dropped away, with things like banking apps or otherwise payment schemes where you do things that seem inconsistent or unexpected. Suddenly the trust goes down and they don't want to do things like give you payment information. They don't complete the sale. Oftentimes, if you dig into it, it isn't just a basic error or, oh, the user changed their mind. When you see that drop off in the sales funnel, it's that they suddenly don't believe that this very expensive thing they're buying is going to happen the way that they've selected it. Or are you actually scaring them? People do this kind of thing and have your phone suddenly do strange, creepy things. I actually have I mentioned earlier, a fitness tracker that failed me because it blows all my battery within a single workout session because they I guess pull the GPS every 1 second or something like that, so it burns it. But a different fitness tracker I do yells at you constantly, out of the blue. It's just you're just riding your bike down the road and suddenly somebody's talking to you, and you can't disable it. That's apparently only available when you pay for the thing. But I'm like, but you're so weird and creepy. I'm not going to pay for you. I'm just going to stop using you instead. So as you go through that, you need to think about, like I said, both positive and negative features. What would you do that maybe you've thought of already? Would this impact the user in a negative way? Will they hate your product, distrust it, be worried about it? Okay. Somebody earlier, and I was going to point at them, but either they've left or I've just forgotten, mentioned integration test stuff. So SIT, we always called it system integration testing. Some similar variation of that stuff. Okay. It's an end-to-end technical test of the system, right? No, it's increasingly a lie, as I mentioned about user context. The user and where they use it and the environment in which they use it, by which I meant the environment, and not just, oh, they're out and about, but what that means, that they're on a mobile network versus Wi-Fi, matters a lot to the way the system works. We've traditionally broken it out as a usability test. We put it in front of people after we validated it actually works, or maybe beforehand, technically, but we can't tell if it works technically if we're not using it the right way. I am constantly running across things that are tested, for example, this one, on a bench only. Oh yes, the app works just fine in the office, on the office Wi-Fi network, but then it doesn't work. I've actually seen this happen on some mobile networks. It simply won't connect. At some point this gets past me, and I don't understand why, but like it would not work on the one bank app I was working on would not work on like anything west of the Mississippi T-Mobile. Why? I don't know. It's something incredibly nerdy and technical. But if you're doing a mass market thing, you need to test that robustly out in the real world. I tend to think, therefore, we need to start integrating stuff, get to ethnography, and actually do stuff. Consider system testing to include the end user, but that starts getting really serious and weird about stuff. So first, do make sure the system basically works. Check the hardware. This one is really nerd level. This is that e-reader thing I was talking about before when I had the plywood one. And we couldn't find any data about how e-ink screens actually worked. So we had to put little prototype pictures up there and use a view camera and scan the picture ourselves and figure out the gray levels and so forth. And make sure, see how long it took to refresh. If anybody's used their kind of blinks before it refreshes stuff, well, how long does that take to refresh? And that influenced what our UI design was. There are many other parts to test. More typically, though, you have your basic responsive website thing. Yes, first make sure it basically works. And this is the exact setup I use almost all the time. All of them at the same time, if you can. Actual hardware, better, for all the network reasons I mentioned, but also because it's hard in like Device Anywhere to do anything side by side. Actually, it's impossible, but there you go. Because of the way our brains work, we see differences better. You've heard that stuff. It's things like the hide from your dinosaur, don't move. You can see differences better than you can see things straight up. I might not have noticed, in fact, I think I didn't in this case, notice the little white bars on the side of this little notifier box, just staring at it. But compared to the other one, it's very obvious that they're different. So when you're testing stuff that's like that, that's similar interfaces in different platforms, try to get them all running up at the same time and compare directly. It's a much easier way to go, yep, looks right. Oop, you are different. I will write a bug. And like I said, test in the field with real hardware and real circumstances. Yes, it's the dongle thing again. That's because it's one of the ones that I can show off a picture of because you have no idea what the dongle actually does or who I'm doing it for. So yeah, you can bring it and show it off. We're doing essentially technical testing out in the field. We cannot get enough real world, say, trucks to plug things into on our own. It's hard to it's easier to populate a lab full of phones than it is a lab full of trucks. So we're actually bringing along engineers out into the field, and we're doing our usability test so that they can check to see what, if it fails, why it's failing, in what way. We're running debug software during the usability test. And I find, somebody's actually showing, the Toby guys, I guess it is, or something, are showing off more of their test stuff. I'm finding increasingly that ethnography out in the field tests are not just really beneficial, really useful, and it's the way people use stuff, but actually are cheaper and easier to do. It's a lot easier to get a hold of people, to call up a business place and say, we're going to stop by and bug some of your people, okay, than it is to have a series of people come into your lab and fake it. And the equipment's cheap. You can get away with filming stuff on your camera phone. Or these crazy, this is again the video glasses. I modified them a little bit so they point down better, but they're like $130 on Amazon. So I've spent a couple $100 on my portable lab. How much does it cost to build a big lab with a one-way mirror in there? So we can start doing that kind of real world out in the world test for nothing, essentially. So, since everybody likes bullet points that are actionable, I threw together some of these. They're actually summarized from somebody else's article. I have my own, but my bullets list are much, much, much longer. So again, this is a link. Go download the thing, and you can read this there. Like I already said, test in the context of the environment. Watch what people do more than what they say. This goes back to things like market research. Somebody will come to you and say, oh, but people told us they want this. Who cares? I want to see whether they work it or not. That actual way. Talk aloud protocol is what we call it. Tell people to tell you why they're doing what they do, what they expect, and what they actually saw. Sounds contradictory to the what do they say, but whatever. I won't explain the point. you might think it's hard to get people to talk about what they're doing. It's actually pretty easy. Once they start talking and you sound, oh, yeah, you look like you're listening, they get very chatty. And so you can get a little insight. They lie, it's not quite right, but you get some insight into what's going on in their brain, which is great. The best ideas come from unscripted threads. So you're going to have a test protocol. Here is your basic premise. Where did my phone go? Anyway, here's your basic premise. Please do the following steps. And then if they get lost, you try to keep them on track. Don't get too deep, too much into that, keeping them down the single path you're testing on. Go ahead and let them wander off and find things strange, at least for a while, because they may be exposing some fairly large flaw in your concept. Not necessarily a technical flaw, but, oh, they really want to do this part. That may be where you make all your money on the product is. They want to use some side part of it, and you can explore that in a future release. Or there's some horrible bug in something that you thought was just turnkey. Oh, I'll just use that standard widget. Everybody knows how to use pull downs. Oh no, it didn't work at all. And most of all, do remember, like I was showing you earlier, that, oh, it's up here. The, paper prototypes or do a slideshow on your phone. You don't need a full prototype to test with the users, at least when doing user testing. Often you don't need a full prototype to test environmentally, to find out how things will work in their actual real life. You can just tape a piece of paper to a phone or do a slideshow or something and get the basic gist of stuff. If not that, test early and often. As soon as the thing is basically working, connected to the network, test it out and see what happens. And that actually is the end of the slideshow. I actually have more stuff, more slides, so if anybody has questions, I can totally answer them. Cool, fun slides. But I don't want to just bore you to tears with additional drivel. So we can either all leave early or nap here, or you can ask questions. Come on, somebody has to have a thought, something I didn't cover now that we're all done with stuff. If you didn't, oh, yeah, for starters, I have cards with some of these links on them. I have stickers. They're based on my touch research, so it's all about holding a phone, but you can have those too. And in general, find me. I'm easy to find. Google my name and you'll find me, and just ask me anything you want. Ever. I'm easy. I give away this stuff all the time. I should require you each to ask me one question. Come on. Nothing? Aw. I'm so used to question time that I just feel like I'm a total failure. If there aren't so many questions, we run out of time. Okay, well, fine. If you just don't want to ask publicly, then we can do that. You can come up to the front when once we break in a minute. But he raised his hand.
So, are the amount of screens getting more or less as time goes by?
The amount of screens.
What kind of variability you can test for?
Oh. Well. There are more devices with more variability all the time, but depending on how you build stuff, I tend to think you don't need to test kind of every one of them. One of the things I've encountered is, say, the typical Android is fragmented, so we need to test on everything. Well, it depends on what you built and how you built it. So if we're using a fairly basic thing, it's a list of stuff, even if it's very pretty, even if it's custom UI things. It's a list, and you select things, and you submit them, and it's got a form and a menu. If you built it in fairly standard ways, it scales just fine. It doesn't. You kind of spot check a few sizes, and it doesn't really matter. You spot check a few versions. You use the information you have about what people are actually using on your system preferably, but if nothing else, at least in your region. And a lot of this stuff is out there. Google shares percentages of OS penetration, at least globally. So you look and you go, oh, well, we better check 3.2 and 4. Everything, and that'll do. You spot check and you find a few bugs and everything's fine. And I've been finding that to be generally true. That that we can get away with maybe fewer than that picture I was testing. For the deep, every single screen is going to be tested version of things. Any minute now, I keep waiting for it to become a complete disaster again. Like everybody's going to start reading web pages on their smartwatch, and then we have to test those. For a while, we've had browsers on your TV or STB or whatever it is. They're just used at such a low rate as our e-paper readers, even though they all have a browser. They're used at such a low rate, we tend to just not worry about them. But I tend to want, say, everything to be built with adequate enough technology that they'll fall back, that they'll be marginally useful no matter what browser you've got, if you're talking about web technology. Good enough? Or, oh, okay, great. Philosophical, deep question. Fine. Anybody else? That laid it off? Okay, well then, fine. We'll come up and take stickers and ask questions further, and if anybody could, yeah, you can help gather pens and stuff like that, but go ahead, if you want to take your drawings with you, do so. Otherwise, if you leave them here, I'll take a few pictures of everything, so I have a document of all your beautiful work, so that I can explain it better next time. Having examples is always good for the workshop, so you know what I'm trying to get you to do. So I think you guys did some good stuff. I liked a lot of this. It was great. Seeing you actually pursue all the crazy ideas I have and how to do this the right way. Yay. Oh, what time is it? Yay, I got a 4.